Hi, everyone. Nice to see you again for another week. Welcome to Beyond the Veil Freaky Friday podcast. How's your week been, guys? Mine's been horrific. My day's been horrific.
Suze?
Yeah. It's been crazy. It's been a crazy
It's been
week.
a crazy week, right?
Yeah.
I think it's been a crazy week for everybody. All right.
Not as crazy as last week, but yeah.
Not as crazy as last week? Oh, well, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. So tonight on our Freaky Friday, we're going to be talking about the New Zealand hotel called the Waitomo Cave. Well, it's actually called the Waitomo Hotel. So what we're going to be discussing is we're going to be discussing the hauntings, we're going to be discussing the history, and make sure you stay to the end because we're going to be discussing my personal experiences I had when I had a personal walkthrough by the caretaker. And I visited on 2 occasions, and we'll let you know at the end. So make sure you stay to the end to hear about my experiences. Welcome, Lo Marie. Nice to see you again. Nice to have you in here.
Hello.
So I guess we need to start with, we're going to start with the history. We're going to go through the history. We're going to go through the alleged hauntings. And then we're going to go through my personal experiences at the end. So as I say, stay right to the end of the broadcast so you can hear. Hi, Lee.
Hi,
Nice
Lee.
to see you.
Good to see you, hon. Lee's one of my cousins.
Oh, hey, awesome.
Good to see you.
So stay right to the end to hear what I personally experienced. So let's kick off with the fact that the Waitomo Caves Hotel, or should I say the Waitomo Hotel, if I use its correct name, is a hotel in New Zealand, which is it the most haunted hotel in New Zealand? Who knows? Hey, Colette, nice to see you. We'll might find out throughout this broadcast whether or not it is or whether or not it isn't. So let's kick off with Kels. Are you going to do the history?
I'm going to do the history, yep.
All right, we'll kick off with you, and welcome to everyone that's joined us so far. Hopefully we'll keep you engaged. Would love it if you could watch the video right to the end. If you get bored with it, please let it keep running and then go off and do something, because the YouTube algorithms will not push us out to people if you don't watch the whole video. So we'd appreciate you watching the whole live stream if you like. Kels, you take it away with the history. Let's start with that.
Here we go. So, the history of the Waitomo district in general is steeped in Māori culture. The name Waitomo comes from the Māori words wai for water and tomo for hole or shaft, referencing the caves and underground rivers that define the region. Local iwi, and for those of you that don't know what iwi means, it's tribes, including Ngātai Maniapoto, and I'm just going to put a disclaimer out there. My Māori pronunciation is not great, so I don't mean to offend. I'll try my best. So local iwis, including Ngāti Maniapoto, have been stewards of this land for centuries, and their traditions and stories are woven into the area's identity. So there's a slide of the general location of the caves. Again, my geography is not that great because I'm just a South Islander. Gracie or Susie, you might be able to elaborate on that. The caves have been very significant to the Māori, serving as both spiritual places and practical shelters. Today, guides share this heritage with visitors, tourists, etc., ensuring that the legacy remains vibrant and respected. The European settlement brought farming and development to it as well, thus laying the foundation for the thriving tourism industry that we see in the area today. So back in 1877, we had European explorers coming through the area, and we had one called Fred Mace and a chief of a local Māori iwi called Taniwha and Patupaiarehe, and he was of the Kāwhia tribe. Sorry if I've fucked that up. And they floated into the caves on a wax raft with lit torches to explore the caves, and they found the glowworms, which was pretty cool. In December 1887. By 1901, tourists had started to flock in such numbers that Tane and his wife decided to build a house close by, and that was constructed in 1901. But in 1904, they decided to convert it to tourist accommodation, and they called it Waitomo House. In that same year, the government actually nationalised the caves, making them a tourist attraction under the Public Works Act.
Can I just stop you there for 1 second?
Sure.
I just want to say the pronunciation of Waitomo, the correct pronunciation is Waitomo.
Waitomo. Okay.
Yeah. Waitomo.
And
that's what I've been directed to say is Waitomo.
Waitomo. Okay.
Sorry.
Cool bananas. All good. So they called it Waitomo House when it was finished in 1904, converting it to accommodation for tourists. And then the government nationalised the caves, made them a national tourist sort of attraction. And then in 1905, the Tourist and Health Resorts Department purchased Waitomo House, and its success under their ownership persuaded them to think that maybe they needed to update it further. So the building was designed by John Campbell, who at the time was the architect in charge of the Public Buildings Division of the Public Works Department. So the extension included 2 facades where it had continuous verandas on both the ground and first floor levels. There was a 2-storey bay window on the rounded corner, and the bayers continued beyond the corrugated iron roof to form an impressive octagonal turret, which you can see in the photos that are coming up on the slides, which had an 8-sided pavilion roof, which is pretty impressive, really. And you can see there's multiple chimneys there too.
Well, we can't yet. Where are they?
What's that? Sorry?
I said we can't see those photos yet. Where are they? Am I missing them on the slides?
You shouldn't be. There we go. So
okay,
yeah. So that's Tane, and that's his wife, and that's a group of explorers in 1901 going through the caves. That's just a newspaper clipping of when the building was finished.
Oh, from 1909. Nice find.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice find.
So that's the turret there that you can see, which is pretty impressive for its time, I reckon.
Oh, my God, yes.
But despite the size of the whole place, it only had 6 bedrooms. The other room, yeah. Which you'd think it would have way more.
It looks like it's got way more than 6 bedrooms at this point.
Yeah. So the other rooms were office, reception, kitchen, dining room, staff rooms,
Fair
etc.
enough, yeah.
Yeah. And I think in those photos you can see there were tents there, and they were available to accommodate more guests, although it wouldn't be the best accommodation.
I'm looking at that ladder up the side of the place. Can you imagine what health and safety would say about that now?
Oh, I know. Especially with health and safety these days, I'll be like, no.
Oh, absolutely.
Where's your scaffold? Where's your helmet? Where's this? Where's that?
Where's your PPE?
So the timber for the 1908 structure, which was the upgrade, was brought into the area, as you can see in one of those photos, by horse-drawn carts. Special facilities were provided for water and electricity because it was so remote from the town supply. So it was a pretty big operation. And it was completed in 1909. So it was positioned on the escarpment overlooking the village. And at this stage, when it was completed, it was called the Government Hostel at Waitomo. Waitomo. So around the mid-1920s, they discovered that there were too many tourists coming in and the building couldn't accommodate them. So they had to increase the capacity again. So between 1927 and 1928, they added a 2-storied plastered reinforced concrete tiled roof extension, which has been known as the Art Deco wing.
Which is this part here, correct?
Yeah, so that's like the top story.
I don't know. Can you see my cursor? Maybe not.
Here we go. So that's Government Hotel.
And that's the Art Deco wing on it. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was the original one, and that's the extension where they've just like increased it to accommodate all the extra tourists that they obviously weren't expecting. So there was a lot of architectural influences, and I'm not a Nazi person, so it means nothing to me, to be fair.
Oh, I am. I do love that. I do love that.
Oh, okay. Cool. So you've got thick concrete walls, decks and patios being in the Spanish mission style of the Spanish missionary. And then you've got concrete pillars and facades that are in the Cape Dutch style. And that's all gibberish to me, to be fair. But often seen in South Africa, apparently. So quite a mix. But it seems to work. It seems to kind of just flow. The whole building doesn't really look like it's a mishmash. It just seems to, work.
Well, you can actually tell the different architectural styles when you go up there. You can see that the left-hand side has been built at some stage, then the middle side has been built at another stage, and then the third side on the left has been built at a separate stage that has tried to meld in with the middle stage, if you know what I mean.
I'm not that observant. It's just a building to me, which is really bad. But yeah, it's quite impressive how they've made it just all sort of meld in and make it look like a cohesive thing.
Yeah.
So after 1954, well, in 1954, the hostel, which was the Waitomo Government Hostel, I think.
Yeah.
It got a liquor license in 1954, and then it became known as the Waitomo Caves Hotel, or the Waitomo Hotel.
Yeah. Everyone knows it as the Waitomo Caves Hotel, and yet its real name is just the Waitomo
Hotel. Yeah. And this is where there's a lot of inconsistencies when you do your research. They refer to each different age in the building's lifespan is referred to as 2 or 3 different things, and that's because they were always known as different things. But it went from the Waitomo Hostel to the Waitomo Hotel when it got its liquor license in 1955. And then in 1955, it became part of the government-owned hotel chain called the Tourist Hotel Corporation.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah. So it had been a popular tourist venue, but then the Waitomo, Ruakuri and Aranui Caves were closed to the public in the 70s as a result of the harmful effects of pollution. And so they got closed down. So then in the 1980s, the ownership passed to the, and I'm really going to apologise for my pronunciation here again, the Taniwha and Art Deco Trust, which is the trust for the descendants of the original chief who built the building to start with, as part of a Waitangi Treaty settlement. And then in 1990, the government sold the hotel lease to the Southern Pacific Hotel Corporation, and they then sold the lease to the Tourism Holdings Limited in 96. So the trust subsequently leased from there to the Taharoa Tourism Management Group, which markets as, the Wellesley Hotels and Resorts.
Yep.
By 2012, the hotel was due for a planned $3.5 million refurbishment because none of the buildings met the building codes, etc. at that stage. But the Taniwha and Art Trust didn't have any money because this case was still going in the courts and everything was frozen, even though they were entitled to a 51% share of the royalties. But eventually in 2015, I think, the case was resolved in their favour. Refurbishment began, and it was operated under the Wellesley Hotel Group name until 2020.
Yep.
But then, sadly, in September 2021, it was closed, and it's waiting for further refurbishment. Unfortunately,
it's still closed, and I'm in contact with the trust that administers the leasing of it, and it's still closed.
Such a waste. I hope they can manage to refurbish it and reopen it.
I'm not sure about that. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, just a quick postscript. The place has been registered as a historic place because it represents the work of 2 different eras of government architecture. It was registered under the Historic Places Act in 1980. Well, the act was the 1980 Act, but it was categorised as a Category 2 historic place in 1990. So that protects it to a certain degree as well. So
it'll be interesting to see what happens with it.
Hopefully.
Moving forward. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So, cool. Thanks. That is an absolute diabolically accurate time frame of what's happened and when it's happened and who owns it and blah, blah, blah. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Carls. Susie, let's take it away with your bat ears. Love him.
And this is the what I'm looking forward to because I have no idea about Waitomo.
I'm just actually wondering where Tone is because Tone had been like with Susie's bat ears. I'm waiting for him to pop in, but you know. So go on and tell us the hauntings.
Well, I found quite a few actually, and then I've got a little fun fact at the end as well. there's been a number of reported hauntings. So we'll start with the Māori princess. So there's a legend that a Māori princess dating from the Kingitanga versus Britain era, who was a daughter of a high-ranking Māori chief, became enamored with a British soldier. One evening after sneaking out of the hotel on the second floor, making her way down to the encampment for a bit of a romantic rendezvous, she was mistaken for a warrior by one of the British sentries and was shot dead. So some say she haunts room 12. She moves the lights in the bathroom. She's notorious for pulling off bed sheets, tickling feet, things like that. Others say she haunts the honeymoon suite, which is in the Art Deco.
Which is the turret room, yeah.
And some say her spirit is said to haunt the entire Victorian wing. So she's also said to have taken up residence in the attic at some point, and her moaning could be heard coming from the area quite regularly. Then we move on to the ghost of room 14. So
can we just stop there for 1 second?
Sure.
Because allegedly there was a gentleman in the this is how urban legend goes, but there was a gentleman in the 1950s or the 1960s that supposedly had been in the dining room earlier that night and had gone up to his room.
You're just going to take the next one.
Oh, sorry. Okay, I'll shut up then.
Kill my thunder.
I'll shut up. You get on with the haunted girl stuff. You get on with it, girl.
So he is the ghost of room 14.
Oh, okay.
So he relates to the Māori princess, like you've just started to say. So he was a young male guest at the hotel, and he apparently felt what was claimed to be her spirit passing through him while he was down in the dining room area. After telling the tale to several guests staying at the hotel, he went back up to his room and took his own life. And so he's now said to haunt the corridors and room 14. Hanging was said to be his method of choice. But in room 14, it has been claimed that the bath has been seen dripping with blood. So make of that what you will.
Well done.
Yeah. So I'll skip this next one and do that a little bit later. So then there's room 12A. For those that don't know, it's common for hotels to avoid having a number 13. So instead, they named the room 12A. So this is claimed to be an absolute hive of paranormal activity, with footprints that have formed on spilt talcum powder, objects being moved about, and a bath even boiling.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That sounds painful.
Yeah. You'd want to hope it doesn't happen when you're in there.
Yeah.
Couldn't find a whole lot on that. Then room 25, which is a 3-bedroom family room on the upper floor in the Art Deco wing, is an area that staff apparently don't like to go to. There's been a lot of reports of just bad feelings, screams, movement of objects, and the room is said to be associated with a former matron who is said to still try and keep order in the hotel's wing by giving orders to living staff as if she's still in charge.
Like she doesn't know she's dead.
Yeah. So I did actually
and
watch.
I've got more on that later, so stay to the end.
Well,
maybe Susie's already covered it.
Oh no, there's more. But wait, there's more.
I'm sure there is. I watched a video the other day of some investigators who went through, and the staff member said, "This is as far as I go. I won't take you any further." And they said, "Oh no, well, can you show us out to our room?" And she went, No, I don't go any further than this. So that's quite interesting.
But that's part of her job, as in like her daily job. She just said, "Nah, this is as far as I go. See ya."
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I don't know what I've done. I've just freaked out the whole program. I beg your pardon, everybody.
Get rid of the slides.
You're just having a play.
Whoops.
So the next one is Cat Alley, which is the old servants' quarters and staff access, which became known as Cat Alley. It's a cluster of small rooms and corridors that connect the staff sort of accommodation to the kitchen and restaurant. And the ghost of Cat Alley is attributed to an accident that happened in the 1930s where a maid apparently snuck her young boy, and he was skipping through the kitchen, knocked over a pot of boiling water, which burned him so badly he died. Hotel staff named him Daniel, and he's said to be heard giggling, skipping around the hotel, and children staying in the hotel have often complained that they were being followed by a weird boy.
Oh.
Next one is the dining room. So again, another paranormal hotspot. Reports of blasts of cold air from nowhere, doors opening of their own accord, strange lights, and spectral waiters have all been apparently witnessed by both guests and staff.
Ooh.
Then there's the legend of Mrs. Rutherford. So there have been reported sightings of a Māori man and a woman dressed in Victorian clothing. No one seems to know who the Māori man is, but the woman dressed in Victorian clothes has been reported by a former staff member as being Mrs. Rutherford, although there doesn't appear to be any record of her. But she was apparently the wife of the original owner, and her dress caught fire, resulting in her burning to death.
Oh, I've just got the chills.
Now, here's our fun fact. For anyone that likes horror movies, you'll know who Guillermo del Toro is. I don't.
Oh, yeah, bitch.
Yep. So he was in New Zealand scouting locations for the Hobbit trilogy in 2009, which he ended up not filming. Peter Jackson did, but he convinced the owners of the Waitomo Caves Hotel, or the Waitomo Hotel, to open their doors to him and his team. He'd heard it was haunted and claimed, "I knew this from other ghost aficionados." And as it was the off-season, the hotel was closed, so they agreed to open it to him and his team. Like most people would.
So they literally had the whole place to themselves, right?
Yeah, they had the whole place to themselves.
And can you excuse me for a minute? I have to pee.
All class, Grace.
It's worse, Susie.
So most people, obviously, when they check into a hotel, they'll ask for a room with a view or a balcony or, something nice. But
not a brick wall. Yeah.
Yeah, but Guillermo, no, he asks for haunted rooms. So he's apparently only encountered 2 ghosts in his life, one of which he believes came during the night while he was staying in Waitomo. He was quoted as saying, "I heard a horrible murder being committed in the room. I was actually terrified. I didn't sleep at all that night. What was strange was the next morning, I wasn't tired, but I was wired and scared. I never imagined having those fears. It was absolutely terrifying." The experience affected him so much, including blood-chilling screams that are now replicated in his film Crimson Peak. So if you've seen Crimson Peak,
yes,
the murder in a bathtub moment, that comes directly from his time in Waitomo Hotel.
Wow. I mean, I've watched that, but I had no idea of where that came from. So I'm going to have to watch it again with that in mind. Was he awake at the time that he supposedly heard the murders?
Yeah.
Or could it be sleep paralysis? I don't know.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Hello. Sorry.
Hello.
I'm ever so sorry. Sorry, viewers. Oh, God, I feel better.
Nothing like a good whiz.
But that's okay, Trace. It's all on you now. That's fine. It's all on you now.
Oh, shit. What? Is that it?
Over to you, Trace.
Oh, okay. Okay. So let's talk about, let's talk about some of these hauntings, okay? Because some of them are incredibly far-fetched, and some of them are what I would term as urban legends.
Yeah.
So let's address Daniel. First and foremost, Daniel, the little boy who apparently died after having a boiling hot cauldron or bucket of water or whatever tossed over him. I have researched the newspapers of the time from 1890 right through to, which was before it was actually, the hotel was actually created, right through to 1950, and there is nothing in the newspapers at all about the scolding or the death of a child from a scolding. There are plenty of reports of the death of a child from a scolding in their own home, but there is in that area as well, but there is nothing about a death of a child from a scolding at the Waitomo Caves Hotel. So let's get that laid out from the outset, okay? Let's talk about Mrs. Rutherford, who was supposedly and reported on the internet quite frequently, reportedly as the wife of the first owner of the hotel. Well, we know the first owner of the hotel was Taniwha, well, Tane Taniwha, and that was not his wife's name. The second owner of the hotel was the government. So we'd have to be looking at the fact that this was perhaps a manager of the hotel's wife's name. The first manager and the second manager was not called Rutherford. So I'm not sure where this Mrs. Rutherford comes from. However,
or it could just be fictional.
Yeah, absolutely. So, however, I'm going to relate back to that alleged haunting from a Mrs. Rutherford. I think they've got the name wrong. I think they've got the person wrong, but the haunting does exist, and I have it on very good authority that it does exist. So we're going to come back to that. What was another haunting, alleged haunting that you spoke about? So, 12A.
14. So the guy that hung himself
14.
seeing the Māori princess in the dining room.
Right. Okay. So I'm going to now. This particularly shoots me into the bathtub that bleeds blood. Okay. Whatever. No reports ever of that absolutely happening at any stage. I have actually sat down. I drove out to Waitomo and I sat down and I had a 2-hour-long interview with a housekeeper from there that had been a housekeeper prior to the hotel shutting. And she exclaimed that there was never any bathtubs of blood that she ever saw in the 3 years that she worked there. However, there was something interesting. There was a couple of interesting points that she made to me. One was that at the time the hotel was shut, they got a chef from one of their hotels in Kororo to move to the Waitomo and act as a caretaker for a very short period of time. But he was in the hotel. She said he didn't have a car, so she would quite often text him and say, do you need anything? And he'd go, yes, I need this, that, and the other. And she would drive up and she would pick him up because she lived in Tikawiti, and she would pick him up and she would take him into Tikawiti and she would get him socks and stuff, like take him to do his shopping, literally, whatever he needed. He exclaimed to her that the hotel was terrifying. And when night came, he did not venture outside of the manager's room, which he was staying in, the manager's apartment in which he was staying in. He would hear bangs, he would hear people walking, he would hear voices, and there would be nobody in the hotel. So when nightfall came, he locked his door and he refused to come out. He was actually Korean. He was terrified of that place, she told me. The
Do you
other
think
thing
it's a cultural thing?
I think it will probably be a cultural thing, also amassed with the fact that people are constantly trying to break in there because it's renowned to be haunted.
Yeah.
And also with the fact that I actually, after what I experienced, I do believe that he did experience what he said he experienced. The other thing she said to me was that while she was housekeeping there, she and another housekeeper, they would go into the rooms and they would prop the door open of the rooms while they were dealing with whatever they needed to in the rooms. Because, of course, you have to vacuum in the doorway, so the door would be propped open. She said quite often they would be making the beds and they would look up and there would be this woman in a black dress that would walk past the room.
Cool.
She said she would rush out to the hallway and look, and there would be absolutely nobody there. So it became common courtesy, as she put it, as when she saw this woman, when she was folding the beds and making the beds, and she saw this woman walk past the door, she would yell out, "Oh, hello, matron." And she would leave it at that. She would just acknowledge whatever she saw and leave it at that. I was very lucky enough. I decided, and this is going back a number of years ago, and I mean a number of years ago. This is going back 20 years ago now. I was going to hold my 40th birthday party there. And I was going to rent the whole hotel out because it was haunted. So I was going to hire a band because my birthday's on New Year's Eve. I was going to hire a band, have rooms for all my friends there, and everyone was going to go and stay there, and we were going to have a massive New Year's Eve party. So I went out to have a chat to their events manager about how this was going to unfold. We were lucky enough that the caretaker that had been the caretaker of the property for 20 years and some was the one that was taking us around. So he took us upstairs and let us in everywhere we wanted to see. He opened up some rooms and I said, "Oh, well, which are the haunted rooms?" And he said, "Well, you tell me." And there were some rooms he opened up and I walked into and I went, "No, I don't feel anything in here." And then there were some rooms he opened up and I walked into and I was like, yeah, not staying in here. Not staying in here. And I was out within 2 seconds. Now, one of those rooms was room 25. Now, room 25 was supposedly the room that, how do you pronounce his name? Guillermo, whatever. That producer?
Guillermo.
Guillermo?
Yep. Something
That
like
was one of the rooms that I walked into. And I didn't realize it at the time that was the room that he'd stayed in. Now, I walked in there and he goes, "Oh, this is the family room," the guy that was showing me the room. And I turned around to him and I went, "Are you kidding me?" And he went, "What?" And I said, "You let families stay in here?" It had the most ugliest feel that I have ever experienced in any place I've ever walked into. And I've walked into some pretty gnarly haunted locations, and this one was vile. It was absolutely vile.
Wow.
And I said, "You actually let families stay in here?" And he goes, "Well, it's a family room." And I went, "Well, I wouldn't be allowing families in here for 1 second. I wouldn't even stay in here with 6 of my mates on the piss, mate, honestly." And he said, "Oh, that's funny you should say that. This is one of the worst haunted rooms in this hotel."
Wow.
So I kind of find that really interesting.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
Whoops.
I walked down the hallway and I ran into a cleaner in the hotel, and I spoke to her and I asked her about the haunted rooms, and she Māori. She was a Māori lady, and she refused to speak to me about the haunted rooms. And she said, I can't talk to you about them because if I talk to you about them, they'll come. And I was like, okay. And she said,
Right.
but what I will say to you is that program that they had on TV in New Zealand was rubbish. They got all the room numbers wrong.
Is that
And I
the
went,
Ghost Hunters one?
Yep. And I went, oh, that's interesting. So you're
Sure,
telling me
Sarah.
so which rooms are the right ones? And she goes, I'm not telling you. And I went, okay, all right, fair enough. Now, the other housekeeper that I interviewed, she told me there was a room in the hotel that was used as a closet. Now, a storage room. And that was the room that supposedly the guy committed suicide in. And no one has stayed in that for decades, and it has not been opened for decades. There is only one person that has the key to that room, and that is the hotel manager, and it's used as a storage room only.
Why is
And
that?
I went, oh, okay. And I said, why is that? And she said, because apparently it's so haunted, they stopped using it.
Yep.
And it's not room 14, and it's not room 12A, and it's not room 12B. So that's interesting in itself. If I'm going to talk about the experiences that I had there, and we've got to, I'm going to make this really clear right now. Experiences are experiences from an individual perspective, and they're not corroboration of anything paranormal in any way, shape, or form, right? We all agree on that, yeah?
Yep.
How do I even start this? Because this screws me up every time.
Just do it.
The first time that I went to the Waitomo Hotel as a guest, I had in tow 2 people from Ireland with me. They were both authors and they were both witches. One of them has had her books transcribed in 78 different languages. She's been writing on Wicca and witchcraft since the 1970s, so she's very well versed in what she does. Now, I was told by her husband, and we'd brought them over to New Zealand to run a series of workshops, and they were staying with us for 3 weeks. So we took them out to the Waitomo Hotel. The first thing her husband said to me was, is it haunted? And I said, yes, it is. And he said, for Christ's sake, don't tell her. She won't go in there if you tell her it is haunted. So we pull up and she's like, oh, very historical, isn't it? And I'm like, yeah. She gets out the car. We all walk in. I turn around and I look at her. She goes to walk in. She raises her foot over the foot, the footfall, the footstep to get into the hotel. And she stops and she puts her foot back and she says to her husband, I'm not coming in here. It's haunted, isn't it? And he goes, yeah, it is. And she goes, I'm not coming in here. I'm going to go sit in the car. I'll stand outside. I'll have a cigarette, but I'm not coming in here. I don't like this place. I'm not coming in here.
Wow.
And I went, that's interesting. So he came up to me and goes,
Can I ask
yeah,
if she was a witch?
yes.
And I'm not saying all witches are into haunted stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But you'd think she'd be a bit more immune to a place that's haunted. Was there anything in particular that you think may have kind of
Yeah.
made it think, nah?
Yeah, I do. But that's my own personal opinion, and I'm not going to share that. I don't
Okay.
think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got my own opinions about this location, which seem very far fetched and very wild, but it's from what I've experienced,
Yeah.
from what other people I've interviewed have told me. But yeah, she would not step foot in that place. So she did exactly what she stood outside, she had a cigarette, she sat in the car, she listened to music, she got out, she had another cigarette while the rest of us walked around.
Mm.
Now, at that time, Craig and I were yakking to the receptionist, and so was her husband, because she was from Scotland at the time. So he was very much like, oh, where are you from? How long you been out here? Blah, 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 blah. Because although he was living in Ireland, he was actually English. So he was yakking away to her. And then when he left and had a wander around, I started yakking to her. So my partner and I were standing in the reception area, and I remember looking through to the dining room, and there was this waiter that was walking around with a tray up on his hand like so, and he had the full coattails. Do you know what I mean? The
full garb.
Waistcoat, coattails on, white gloves, and he was walking around with a tray like this, and he was weaving in and out between the seats. And I remember looking at him and thinking, why does he look so busy when no one's in the bar? And I thought that was really weird. And I didn't say anything. And then time went by, and I said something to Craig about, because being an ex-hospitality tutor, not at the time, but a manager at the time, I was very much like, oh, it was so nice to see a staff member, do you know what, upping his ante and walking around really quick and looking like he was on form, even though there wasn't anyone in there. And he turned around to me and said, what waiter? And I went, the waiter in the bar. And he goes, there wasn't a waiter in the bar. And I said, there was a guy, and like white coat and tails and white gloves and the whole 9 yards. I only saw him from the back, but he was really flat out. And he goes, I didn't see that. And then we come back, was it 8 years later, to hire the hotel out for my 40th birthday party. 5 years later, something like that. And the first thing we said when we walked in was, oh, when did you have the renovations done? And the manager says, we haven't had any renovations done. And we both went, yeah, you have. This wall was all glass last time we were here. So when did that get changed? And he goes, that wall's never been all glass, and we haven't had any renovations. And I looked at my ex-partner, and he looked at me, and we both kind of went, okay. We went out to the car afterwards, and I said, do you remember last time we were here? That wall was all glass. Am I wrong or am I right? And he goes, no, you're right. And I said, and remember I said about that waiter that was running around in the dining room, and I could see him because of this glass wall. And he goes, yeah, I remember. And I said, hang on a minute. Am I just misremembering this? Is this a false memory of mine? And he goes, no, that wall was like the old square blocks that you would have in a bathroom type of thing. Do you know in the 60s and the 70s?
Yeah, the old retro style.
Yes.
I love
the
those.
square double blocks.
Yeah.
And I said that whole wall was made of that until you got to the door. And he goes, that's exactly what I saw as well. And we just sat there and we drove the whole way back to Hamilton and hardly said anything to each other. And when we got back home, I said, that, I'm sorry, but this is what I saw. And he goes, that's what I saw. And I said, correct me if I'm wrong. And he goes, you're not wrong. That's what I saw too last time we were there. So I think we had some form of a time slip of some kind for that very, very short period of time, which was about 2 or 3 minutes. Incidentally, I have seen a post online about a woman who stayed there the weekend saying she had a lovely weekend. It was blah, 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 blah. There was nothing spooky about it. It was her report about her going away for the weekend type of thing with her hubby, right? And at the end of it, she says, we went down for breakfast the next morning. And she said, supposedly this place was haunted. We never experienced anything until I went down for breakfast the next morning. Where she went down for breakfast, she said they were sitting in the bar, obviously, where I saw what I saw. And she said this waiter came up and spoke to her in tails and white gloves with a silver tray and asked how her weekend was going. And she said, oh, it was fantastic. And they'd done this and they'd done that and they'd done the other. And he said, what have you got planned for today? So she told him what they had planned for the day. And he said, oh, fantastic. Have a lovely time. And he walked away and she said, thank you so much. And her husband turned around to her and said, who the fuck are you talking to?
And wouldn't you question if someone come up to you in black and white tails, like, why are you dressed so extravagant, like extravagantly?
It's considered to be a 5, at that stage it was considered to be a 5-star hotel. So that wouldn't have been out of sync, if you like.
But were the other waiters or waitresses dressed as extravagantly as
she didn't say she saw any. She just said she spoke to this one. And when she was yakking away, her husband was looking at her weird and she kept yakking. And then when she stopped yakking, he said, who the fuck were you talking to? And she said, the waiter. And he goes,
do I need to call the Lulu bin?
Yeah. He goes, what waiter? And she said, the waiter that was just at our table. And he goes, there wasn't anyone there. There's no one there. And she said he absolutely was serious. And I saw him as solid as I saw my husband. And that's exactly what I saw. And I found this snippet online. Oh, it was years. It would have been 6, 7 years after I saw what I saw. So when I saw it, I'm like, damn, somebody else has seen exactly the same thing that I saw. And it's the only thing, and I cannot find that. I went back. It was just a post somewhere, and I can't even remember where I saw it, but she saw exactly what I saw.
Wow.
Pixar, it didn't happen.
Well, yeah, not quite. So that's interesting in itself that somebody else had the same experience to a certain degree. I didn't speak to the guy. She actually spoke to a guy that wasn't there and had her husband looking at her like she was a nut job. But I actually saw the guy from standing in the reception area and looking through to what was the bar area, which I believed was the area that they served breakfast back in the day. So
and you weren't a nut job?
Well, I am a nut job.
Well, we know that.
that doesn't mean to say what I see I'm not seeing. So that was really, really interesting. Like when I found that, I was like, oh my God, no freaking way. Somebody else saw what I saw. I was absolutely gobsmacked. I mean, I should have reached out. I should have reached out and said, it's okay. It's okay. You're not insane because I saw the same waiter. So there's obviously a waiter there that is very intent on keeping up his duties. But as I don't know about the Māori princess, I went up to the turret room and I spent quite a bit of time up there. I was in 12A, spent quite a bit of time in there. I was in 12B and spent quite a bit of time in there. The room that was a closet, I can actually attest to the fact I pointed to a room when I was up there with the caretaker and I said, "What room is that?" Because I just had a vibe about it. And he goes, "Oh, that's just a storage room. You don't worry about that room." Now, that is the room supposedly when I interviewed the housekeeper about 12 years later, that is the room supposedly that the individual committed suicide in. And it's so haunted that they shut it off, locked it up. And the only person that has the key to that is the manager. And she said, "I worked there for 3 years and it was never opened the whole time I was there." So that's all I got to say. There is also another story about a female, and this has only been seen once on the internet about 25 years ago. And I saw it myself. Someone pointed it out to me, so I went and looked, and it was there. Of a housekeeper or a waitress that turned up, and she was found dead in the outside basement during the day. And I've not been able to corroborate this by any newspaper clippings or any police investigations or anything remotely like that. But supposedly, when they tried to find out who she was, they had ran into a dead wall and couldn't actually ascertain who this individual was that was staying at the hotel because the names she gave were fake. As I say, I can't find anything out about that. Just like I can't find anything out about Daniel being scolded. But I can find out about hundreds of other children in the area that were scolded. So I kind of think if this child was scolded at the hotel, there would have been something. I mean, let's face it, the newspapers of the time were actually advertising the fact that a priest was holding a Sunday sermon at a hotel. So they're going to advertise things like some child being burnt to death at a hotel. I don't know. I'm just saying that you have to put down the bath bleeding blood. I mean, that's just ridiculous. You have to put that down to urban legend. You have to put the child being scolded to death down to urban legend and his ghost haunting the hotel. You have to put the waitress or whatever that was found dead in the understairs room. I actually have been in the understairs room. There is a room that is underneath the hotel that you access from outside of the hotel only. It's like an old larder, and it does have a door, an old wooden door, and it has a massive rusted padlock on it about that big. And I have a feeling that that is the entry to the caves underneath the hotel, because there are reportedly caves underneath the hotel, and there's reportedly running water in those caves underneath the hotel. So I don't know whether or not that's true. All I know is that I saw the door, I saw the massive padlock on it, and there was something not that great behind that door. And considering that the person that built the house was one of the guides that took people through the caves, it would be quite suggestive and it would be quite logical to think that he would have an entrance from that house into the caves to be able to do that. So I don't know. All I know is that place has got something going on. What that something going on is, I'm not sure. But I've seen strange things there. I've been into the strange rooms. And yeah, there's definitely something happening there. So that's all I've got to say on the matter. I can't explain my experiences. I can't explain anybody else's experiences, and they're not for me to explain anyway. They're for them to explain. But I can't explain my experiences, and having a witness to my experiences, particularly my time slip, that was a whole different hotel that we were looking at in that reception area when we were there. And when we come back 10 years later to be told that, or 8 years later to be told that no, there's been no renovations done whatsoever. And yet that's not what we saw when we were here. What we're looking at now is not what we saw when we were here last time. And that waiter, yeah. The reason why I focused on the waiter was because I thought it was so odd that he was looking so busy in a bar that had no one sitting in it. And I thought that was weird. And that's why I focused on him. It was just out of place. So that's my experience at that place. I know that investigators have been there and they've had other experiences. Bless you.
Bless you.
I know that there have been investigators that have experienced very strange things. Barbara was one with her necklace that she took off, a Celtic cross, and she put it on her bedside table, and the next morning she woke up and it was snapped in half.
Wow.
And she's got a photo of it that she took on the morning to prove it. So I don't know. You can only report what others have to say, but I have had experiences there myself, and I have interviewed people who have worked there for years and had repeated experiences. So there is something definitely off about that hotel. And to have the old Guillermo, I don't know how to say that guy's name, that film producer. So he based what he heard on Crimson Tide, his movie Crimson Tide.
Was it Crimson Tide?
Crimson Peak.
Crimson
Peak.
Peak. Crimson Peak. Yeah, which he said was like a family being murdered in that room.
Mm.
And that room, I went into that room, it was ugly. It was like I walked in, I turned around, I walked out, and I said, I don't believe that you allow families to sleep in this room. Seriously. It was horrific. The vibe was horrific. And that was in broad daylight. So that's it. That's all I've got to say about the Waitomo Caves Hotel. Is it the most haunted hotel in New Zealand? Who knows? There are some other canny haunted hotels we're going to be telling you about in the future, that's for sure. So this isn't the only one in New Zealand, believe you me. We got lots coming up in the future. So stay tuned for that. And next week, oh my God, I haven't even looked at what we're talking about next week. What the hell are we talking about next week?
Astral projection and OBEs.
Oh, thank you, Kels. We're going to discuss, thanks, much appreciated. We are going to discuss astral projection and OBEs, out-of-body experiences. Now, I can't claim to have astrally projected, but I have some interesting out-of-body experiences to discuss. And I'm sure these guys have got some of their own stuff to expout next week.
Yeah.
So
Didn't
thank
even know that's what they were until years later.
nor me, honestly.
Yeah.
And that's the crazy thing, which is just the same as what I experienced at the Waitomo Caves Hotel. I didn't know what I saw the first time that I was there was wrong
Yeah.
until I went back the second time 8 years later and went, oh, you've had renovations done. No. Do you know what I mean? I didn't
Yeah,
realize.
I was just told by my parents, you're having a nightmare, go back to sleep. It's like,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
No.
So Lee says, yeah, that'll be a good one. So excellent, Lee. You're going to join us next week then?
You better, Lee.
Be good to see you.
Love
All right,
you.
so let's take it off tonight and call it a night. And thank you, everyone who joined us for this evening. It was awesome to see you. And oh, Susie, I see you got the glowworms behind you. Oh, Lee says, yep, she's going to be joining us next week. Wicked. Okay, thanks, guys, for joining us tonight on our Waitomo Hotel segment. And we'll see you next week for a topic of astral projection and out-of-body experiences. Until then, apparently we're going to have a wet weekend. Stay dry. I say that every week. Stay dry. Stay happy. Have a good weekend. And we'll see you next Friday for Freaky Friday with Beyond the Veil. Night, guys.